Yuta Okkotsu, the original protagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen as well as the Cursed Child. He is an incredibly powerful person who has gained a large amount of fans as well as a large amount of abilities and strength as time has continued in Jujutsu Kaisen. So today I want to go over all of his abilities, all of his feats, all of that good jazz so we can determine Yuta's abilities, explain them, and most of all, say how strong Yuta Okkotsu actually is. Now up first, we're going to go a little bit over JJK Zero Yuta and where his source of power directly comes from. Where in JJK Zero, he ended up cursing the one he loves in order to turn them into a vengeful spirit after they were hit directly by a truck. That being Rika Orimoto, the soon-to-be Queen of Curses, a near-boundless source of cursed energy that would join him in fighting and fight in order to protect Yuta Okkotsu no matter what. The sheer raw existence of this massive physical force of pure raw power that Rika Orimoto was enough to make Yuta Okkotsu special grade. Without knowing much about Rika's other abilities other than just her immense physical strength, that was enough to say that Yuta Okkotsu was special grade, which we find out later in JJK means that if you are special grade, you are able to solo a nation. However, Yuta became extremely determined to try and infuse Rika's curse directly into a sword in order to use Rika's curse energy and power in order to help the world rather than just having her as a curse in order to free her spirit. And this is where we start to get into the actual feats of Yuta, where he displays how strong he has gotten over only a few months of time during his battle against Suguru Geto, where he directly shows off his ability to use RCT, healing both Maki and Inumaki in the process with RCT, showing off one of the higher levels of RCT as well, due to the fact that we know it's actually much more difficult to heal other people than it is to heal yourself. After performing this feat of RCT, he ends up battling directly against Suguru Geto, where he is performing much better than any of the others did despite jumping him, where it's Yuta and Rika being able to fight Suguru Geto together, and as they fight, they're able to make Geto hold back less and less in physical power, as well as just perform several impressive feats, but that is mainly due to his rapid improvement that he had throughout the battle, where he goes from being around the same speed level to Geto to being able to outspeed him and force him to have to use more speed, as well as, if you take the anime into account, using the Black Flash during the two's battle and displaying his copy ability with Rika, where he pulls off using Inumaki's curse technique, with Rika Orimoto as a curse spirit allowing him to boundlessly copy curse technique with seemingly no conditions other than having to see it at least once. This will be extremely important later, so just keep this in the back of your mind for now and remember this, but Yuta is able to copy curse techniques. Furthermore, he has directly landed the Black Flash if you consider the anime canon, and a lot of people do consider the JJK Zero movie canon due to how much Gege does actually support JJK Zero's movie, and JJK Zero's movie having a much more complete vision in comparison to the actual manga itself, mainly due to the fact that JJK Zero's movie had come out already when JJK's first season was done, and we were pretty deep into the manga itself, with it being directly stated that there is a difference between sorcerers who have landed the Black Flash and who have not landed the Black Flash, and Todo directly comparing it to trying an ingredient, and with trying an ingredient you'll be able to actually know how to cook and use the ingredient better, with that being a very similar thing for curse energy, that once you have a better taste of curse energy you're going to be able to use it better. So now Yuta has a much better source of curse energy control and refinement. Finally, he clashes beams directly against Suguru Geto, where he uses the love beam while also trying to sacrifice his life in order to make the love beam as potent as possible. However, it was up to Rika whether they claimed his life or not, though it should also be noted that Geto was held back a little bit because he chose to send some of his cursed spirits away, so he ended up having to hold back and not use the full thing. On top of that, Geto might have also been mental nerfed at the time as well, because Geto didn't actually want to fight sorcerers, and as we know, mentality does play a huge factor in whether you are at your best or at your worst in Jujutsu Kaisen. For example, Jogo stayed incredibly stagnant throughout Jujutsu Kaisen mainly because of how his mental state was, which was something Sukuna directly chastised him for and told him how he could have improved in order to become much stronger. But with Rika Orimoto dying, Yuta returned to being a grade 4 ranked sorcerer, and spent a year directly training under Miguel, who Miguel is no slouch in teaching. After all, Gojo had options of giving Yuta either to Kusakabe or Nanami directly in order for him to get trained, but he ended up choosing Miguel instead, which if anything just speaks to the level of curse energy control that Miguel had. Furthermore, Miguel was also able to hold Gojo off and keep him there for a total of 12 minutes, which is incredibly impressive. After all, Jogo considered it impossible to hold Gojo off for a total of 1 minute with him and all of the disaster curses there. Granted, Miguel did have a tool in order to counter him, but still Jogo considered Gojo's martial arts ability and curse energy refinement alone to be godlike in comparison to himself. and that was who was training Yuta directly. And after 3 months after the parade of 100 demons, Yuta Okkotsu had managed to regain the rank of special grade, meaning he was fully capable of soloing a nation after 3 months. Now this is more than likely due to his massive reserves of cursed energy, his cursed energy refinement he directly has in base form, as well as the ability to partially manifest Rika and Rika's strength even when partially manifested, which I'm going to explain a little bit more about when we get into Yuta Okkotsu's true abilities explained and we talk about how fully manifested Rika works. But first we need to talk about his fight directly against Yuji Itadori, where when Yuta Okkotsu first arrives, he has so much cursed energy down to the point where Yuji directly confuses Yuta Okkotsu with Gojo to begin with. As we know from several examples in Jujutsu Kaisen that it's actually very hard to be able to tell the strength between two people, even if one is massively stronger than the other, when there is such a massive distance between your own strength and that person's strength. For one example, the Zenin clan directly called Maki on par with Toji, despite the fact that she wasn't on par with Toji yet, and she only became on par with Toji directly in her battle against Cursed Naoya. This is due to the massive strength distance between her and the clan. This is something that Naoya directly does talk about himself, about how no one could really understand Toji due to the level of strength that he was on, other than maybe Gojo, because Gojo was stronger than Toji. This is when Yuta directly lands, shattering the ground and challenging Yuji Itadori in a fight, where the both of them are holding back in their own separate ways, with Yuta Okkotsu choosing not to manifest Rika and only really fighting in base, where he directly does tell Rika that they were only playing a little bit as well. However, it should also be noted in that fight that Yuji was also holding back, because there was a part of his subconscious that it was debating if he should have let Yuta taken him out, and if staying alive was actually worth it, or if it would be better for the world if he just lost his life now. The reason why I believe this is important to bring up is because I see several people talk about this fight, but no one really talks about the fact how both of them held back, only really how Yuta held back, when in reality both of them were actually holding back. In this fight though, he does display several feats, such as keeping up directly with Yuji Itadori several times throughout the fight, though he is unable to blitz Yuji Itadori, but that is not something to be ashamed about either. After all, this is a post-Shibuya demon god Yuji who is directly stronger than the battle against Mahito Yuji, where he achieved 120% of his power, but Choso directly stated that this Yuji was stronger, and yet Yuta was able to keep up with him and actually end up beating him in the end, with partially manifested Rika being enough alone to fully restrain this physical monster who was directly keeping up with Mahito in terms of physical strength. Yuji also directly makes the comparison, calling himself and Yuta direct opposites, where Yuji doesn't have that much cursed energy. He has cursed energy refinement, but he also has the ability of a strong physical body. In comparison to Yuta, who has so much cursed energy to cover his body, the fact that Yuta's base physical body being weak doesn't really matter all too much. This is also where it's directly revealed that Yuta has even more cursed energy than Satoru Gojo in base form. However, Gojo's efficiency is so high thanks to the 6 eyes that it might as well not be the case, because Gojo will never run out of cursed energy like Yuta can run out of cursed energy. Yuta also doesn't need to focus his cursed energy to specific parts of his body due to the fact that he has so much cursed energy, so he can basically cover himself with all of his cursed energy at once and make it near impossible to tell his move, at least for Jujutsu Sorcerer standards, because of how much cursed energy he has flowing in him, and normal sorcerers are used to making their cursed energy flow directly to one part of their body right before they attack, but that's not the case with Yuta Okkotsu thanks to his massive amounts of cursed energy. However, Yuta does ultimately end up defeating Yuji with the help of Rika, even though it's more than likely possible that he could have done it on his own, on top of the fact that he knocks out Choso in one hit. But this should also be noted, it is a fatigue Choso, but he still knocks out Choso in one hit. This is all base Yuta, by the way. Though I should also note this, Yuta is slower than Naoya as well, purely because of the fact that Naoya was actually able to blitz Yuji's perception in comparison to Yuta, who was not able to do this, and in both cases Yuji was directly on guard as well. But now we're going to move on to Yuta's feats directly in the Sendai colony and how strong Yuta Okkotsu actually is, where Yuta ends up battling in effectively a massive free-for-all, but at first he ends up defeating Kurorushi for the first time, needing to use reverse curse technique in order to defeat him by filling him with a massive amount of positive curse energy. Though it should also be noted that Yuta had defeated at least 6 other sorcerers beforehand, but we don't know how good those sorcerers could have been, so we don't know how tired Yuta could have been either. One of those sorcerers being Druve directly as well, one of the 4 people who was in the deadlock. However, we didn't actually see any fights, so there's no feats directly from Yuta for that fight either. However, when Yuta directly battles against Uro and Ryu in his base form, it's directly stated that he needs to heal from each of the attacks and he is welling out of cursed energy. And if without the ring on, he's not exactly doing the best against either of his opponents. Now, I should also note this because I feel like a lot of people do get confused on this. This was not Ryu and Uro versus Yuta. This was a massive free-for-all. Ryu and Uro were fighting directly against each other, where at several points throughout the battle, Uro was directly launching Ryu's attacks right back at him as well. So yeah, this was a free-for-all. This wasn't just a massive Yuta jumping. However, when Ryu directly does punch Yuta in his base form, he says it's like punching a water tank due to how much curse energy Yuta directly has. With Yuta also directly saying that Ryu has incredibly explosive power and incredibly explosive curse energy. However, this is when Yuta directly manifests Rika via putting the ring onto his finger, asking for everything Rika has in terms of power in order to power himself up, refilling himself back to full energy and now having Rika's curse energy as well as his own curse energy flowing through him. With Rika also having a massive amount of curse tools stored inside of her for Yuta to directly use in battle. As the narrator now directly explains how the new version of Rika directly works. Rika is the external storage of curse techniques and curse energy that Orimoto Rika left for Okkotsu after she was released. Only when he's connected to Rika though through the ring can he use curse techniques, fully manifest Rika, obtain Rika's curse energy for himself, and this state lasts for 5 minutes. Now, it should also be noted, because I've seen a lot of people get confused about this, Yuta is able to copy curse techniques while Rika is not out. However, for him to utilize those copied curse techniques, he has to fully manifest Rika directly. And this is why I also believe that Yuta is special grade in his base form and not actually with fully manifested Rika out. Purely because of the fact that this power only lasts directly for 5 minutes, which means partially manifested Rika as well as his massive curse energy reserves is enough for him to be considered special grade in his base form, purely because of the fact that he's not soloing a nation in 5 minutes. In this battle, he displays directly the copied curse technique of the Inumaki's clan abilities, and uses it directly to distract Uro so him and Rika can directly jump her, with Uro taking several of the blows directly, but she still got damage from it nonetheless. Rika also ends up directly fighting against Ryu in this battle, where the both of them do land direct hits on each other and are able to directly damage each other, albeit Ryu does damage Rika more, but that's still incredibly impressive. After all, Sukuna directly complements Ryu's durability. After having a domain clash that was extremely unstable between both Ryu and Uro, where it was directly interrupted by Kurorushi, he ended up defeating both Uro and Ryu in the process. Although this should be noted as well, Kurorushi was heavily responsible for helping as well, taking her arm off directly through his curse technique, through his cockroaches, as well as Ryu being the one who landed the final blow on Uro directly, as well as the fact that it was Ryu's own attack that ended up defeating a heavily exhausted Ryu after he used his own domain expansion. Though in this battle, Yuta Okkotsu had directly gained 2 more copied curse techniques, with one of the curse techniques he had gained being Drew's Shikigami techniques, which allows him to use his hair in order to make several tiny Rikas in order to assist him in battle for use of distraction, which was extremely useful against Uro, mainly because Uro's technique is extremely limited, where it's only really good in 1v1s, but it's not really good in 2v1s because it does require direct hand movements in order to shift space. Furthermore, he also gained direct access to Uro's curse technique, which is Sky Manipulation, which allows him to directly bend space in order to land hits on opponent or deflect people's hits away, which he utilized in order to make Ryu's own attack hit him by bending space. Furthermore, he also gained access to Thin Icebreaker, a technique that directly negates durability due to being space shattering on a person, and that's how the attack functions. As now we're going to move directly onto Shinjuku and the 1 month time skip, where after Kenjaku had directly battled against Takuba and got extremely exhausted by Takuba, Yuta was able to sneak up behind him and take off his head. Before Kenjaku then activated all of his cursed spirits directly, with Rika Orimoto taking out all of the cursed spirits during the short time period that was the entire battle of Kashimo versus Sukuna, as well as Higuruma versus Sukuna. And that's all just assuming that Takuba versus Kenjaku did not take any time at all and just happened in its own little time and space. Before he then directly joined the battle, where he directly clashed his sword against Sukuna's curse energy infused hand slash, which is more likely a dismantle based hand slash considering what we find out in the next chapter. As right after, partially manifested Rika in an incredibly massive form was able to slam their hand down on Sukuna, with their hand being so massive that they made Sukuna look tiny in comparison. Of course, it did break the ground, but it didn't seem like Sukuna was struggling all too much, but it was still pressing into Sukuna nonetheless. As Yuta Okkotsu and Rika directly fight against Sukuna for a little bit, you're using jumping tactics, allowing Yuta to land a few hits directly, and through the 2 of them jumping him directly, they were able to dodge several of Sukuna's attacks. Now, it should also be noted this is a somewhat weakened Sukuna because Yuji has directly already landed one punch on him, which Yuji's punches are able to directly weaken his output as well as his control over the body. Furthermore, he is still recovering from his battle directly against Gojo, and he doesn't have Kamutoke anymore. Before Yuta directly activates his domain expansion and then later on smacks Sukuna directly in the face with a thin ice breaker, ending up actually cutting Sukuna a little bit and making him bleed, which is something that is incredibly impressive, as we're now going to get into how Yuta Okkotsu's domain actually functions and all of his currently copied curse techniques. Okkotsu Yuta's all-encompassing unequivocal love allows him to choose any one of his copy techniques to imbue the barrier with as the domain's sure hit. His remaining copy techniques are scattered randomly amongst the katanas within his domain. Only Okkotsu can utilize them, but not even he knows which katana contains which technique until he grasps it for the first time. While each katana can only be used once, their number is infinite. Now, Yuta Okkotsu's domain is incredibly overpowered because it effectively allows him to make it so one of his techniques are always guaranteed to land, but he is also able to make it so that he can still use his other techniques through his katana. So he can always make one technique that is guaranteed, while he himself is also providing even more pressure to the opponent, while Rika is also directly joining into the battle too, and all of them are just fighting against the opponent directly against each other and overwhelming them massively. And now we're going to move on to all of the curse techniques that Yuta has directly copied, which is the Angel's Jacob's Ladder technique, which is the technique that's able to exterminate evil souls as well as weaken and just turn off curse techniques entirely. Although it does seem to have an output limit and a max limit on when it can and cannot exterminate, because Sukuna's original plan was to allow the technique to actually hit him so he could use the World Cutting Slash, which does imply he could still use it even when Jacob's Ladder is hitting him. It would just be much more difficult. Uro's Sky Manipulation, Druv Shikigami technique, the Cursed Speech technique, Clairvoyance, which he directly got from Charos, which allows him to see directly into the future by a few seconds after he gets a little bit of his opponent's blood, and finally, Cleave. He's able to utilize Sukuna's curse technique Cleave, so he could basically, if he really wanted to, he could turn his domain into Malevolent Shrine if he wanted to, though it would likely not be as effective or as strong. This is also where we get the confirmation of how Yuta's curse technique works, where Ryu's theory gets confirmed that he does actually need to eat a part of the person he's copying the curse technique of, because Yuta directly says you couldn't find your final finger, where it directly implies either he or Rika or Imoto need to eat a part of the opponent's body in order to actually copy the curse technique. Now, it was more than likely Rika who ended up eating it, purely because of the fact that we know Sukuna cannot manifest inside of curses, for curses cannot become vessels. However, not only does he have this many curse techniques, he also has incredible stats now after the post 1 month time skip, where he's directly able to keep up with and even be on the same level of Yuji in terms of speed, with Yuji and Yuta displaying direct relativity in terms of speed and striking strength repeatedly throughout this entire fight. Which Shinjuku Yuji is absolutely insane, because Shinjuku Yuji is even stronger than 214 Yuji, who 214 Yuji is relative to Maki in terms of speed. To put this even more into perspective, the same Naoya who was previously faster than Yuta pre-time skip was being able to keep kept up with a partially awakened Maki. She wasn't even fully awakened by this point or fully realized. However, those are just the feats for Yuta Okkotsu directly. He also has several statements from several of the characters like Gojo and Kenjaku directly that put even more of his strength into perspective for how strong he truly is, as he certainly deserves the role of being second to Satoru Gojo. With a godlike domain, amazing copy curse techniques, and amazing stats to be able to back it up, Yuta is an incredibly powerful sorcerer, especially because of his near boundless amounts of curse energy. But overall, that is all of Yuta Okkotsu's abilities explained, and most of all, how strong Yuta Okkotsu is directly. Now, how strong do you think Yuta Okkotsu